All right, is that better? Yeah, as you can see, I'm having all kinds of problems this morning. So when you couldn't hear me, that was exactly what I was explaining. I'm having all kinds of problems this morning. And so what I was explaining, first of all, welcome to Tabs on Tap. I'm Tabitha Hassell, and I hope you guys all had a really good evening and are off to a great start this morning, despite all of the crazy news with Russia and Ukraine. And Allison, do you still not have sound? Let's see, because on my end, we should have sound. And I'm looking and everything looks fine here. And the reason why I didn't have sound for a second ago wasn't it was just a user error on my part. So I apologize for that. But I have been having some issues this morning. For some reason, when I opened the show up this morning, I've been complaining about people reporting me and different things happening. And yesterday, my video by Dr. Artis wouldn't play. Well, when I opened the show this morning, there you can tell, like if I send a link out to someone, let's say Colonel Joe Adams, I can see him waiting in the wings. It tells me that there's somebody waiting in the wings to come on the show. Then I flip over, I click, and then he's added to the system. Well, this morning when I logged in and was getting the show started, it had the icon that somebody was waiting in the wings. And so I'm thinking, well, I haven't invited anyone on today because gosh knows I have no time right now to invite guests, although that is something I'm working on. And I know Colonel Joe Adams isn't coming on today. And at first I thought, well, maybe he just decided to pop in because there is so much going on today. Today is a very big day between what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. I thought, well, maybe he popped in and he's going to add to it because I'm sure he does have a lot to say about this. And so I kept trying to click on it and nothing was there. So I don't know what's happening. It shows me, or it did, it's gone now, but it was showing that somebody was trying to join the show and they cannot do that without me sending out a link for someone to join. So I have no idea what was happening. No idea what was happening, but we'll get into that another time and another day. I do think there is something strange happening, but I also think that the censorship is crazy right now. It is really crazy, and I really do think I don't think it's somebody local or a listener or anyone else sabotaging my podcast because it's happening all across the country. I looked it up last night, all across the country. I really do think that it's a lot of these social media platforms who are stepping up efforts to attack algorithms, certain words that we're saying that they expect conservative podcasters or video clips to say. And I think that they are just heavily, heavily, heavily censoring us ahead of Trump coming into the picture because we already know what does Donald Trump want to do. He is going to allow us to have the free speech and he is going to use the FCC to go after some of these platforms that do have all of these armies of fact checkers that suppress the truth. So I think that ahead of these decisions, they're doing everything they can to suppress as much as they can before they lose control, right? And again, we don't have to worry about that because guess what? We can go over to X, we can go to Telegram. There's so many other Truth Social, Rumble. There's a lot of places we can go and to avoid the censorship. And do not go to Blue Sky, like I said yesterday. Let them have their platform. They don't want us over there. That's fine. Let them have their platform and then leave us to have our freedom of speech elsewhere because we know they're trying to shut down X. But guess what? They're no longer going to have that opportunity. Good for us. Trump and, of course, Elon Musk going to make sure we have our freedom of speech if there is anything else they do. Good morning, Allison and Jay and Karen. And let's see here. I can't scroll my comments. Good morning, Corner Dusty. I'm not Dusty. Is that you from? I believe you're in Iron County or out that way. And good morning, Sherry. There's so much going on this morning, and something that I'm going to talk about is I'm thinking about moving the show back to 8 a.m. We did that for a week kind of as a trial just to see how it went. But, I don't want it to be 8 o'clock. I want it to be 7 a.m. But I think I would have to get up at 2 a.m. or not sleep at all to get things organized and ready by 7 a.m. because it takes a lot. I'm telling you guys, it takes a lot to download videos, upload the videos, put them into place, get everything ready. Most, of course, shows have a producer, and they're the ones taking care of formulating the show. But every morning, not only am I looking at the news, but I'm also putting the show together, and it is really hard to do. So I just keep getting later and later at 7 a.m. To where I might as well just be at 8 a.m. Good morning, Lori, and good. Thank you for downloading X. It is a fantastic platform. Good morning, Ryan. Jay, once Trump takes office, these other sites will back off and not risk potential lawsuits by the powers that be. You're absolutely correct, Jay. And I think they're going at it as hard as they can right now. Look at all the unemployed fact checkers that are going to be around. Although I did see maybe fact checkers are changing their tunes. Somebody told me, and I read it online, that I believe they fact checked the New York Times about some of the statements they were making. I can't recall who it was against, and that part doesn't matter, but they fact checked it in our favor, which does not normally happen. So I would love to see the tables turned when it comes to fact checking. So some of the things I want to talk about today, we can't, I know some people don't like to hear about foreign news. One of the things we cannot avoid talking about today is what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, because things took a very serious turn overnight, as most of you probably know. I know yesterday during the show, I was talking about the long range missiles, what we refer to as the ATACMS, of course, the official terminology for those long range missiles. And at that time, I didn't know that Ukraine already had the missiles. I had thought that they could potentially have them because I know in September it was discussed that they could potentially start using these long range missiles. And that's when Elon Musk shut down their Starlink service so that they could not use the internet guidance that they need to launch these long range missiles into Russia. And when they did that, when he shut that down, that kind of foiled the plan. And then here we are today back at it. And of course, Biden finally announcing, which he pretty much gave them permission back in September and then kind of backtracked a little bit. And I think that was because Elon Musk got involved. And now, of course, they're back at it. And yesterday, I was kind of back and forth, like, do they already have them? If they don't already have the ATACMS, then it could take months, many months, for them to receive the long range missiles. But guess what? They already have them. And we should have known that. Not only do they already have them, but they've already used them. So despite warnings of a nuclear war from, of course, Russian President Putin, they have actually they launched 6 ATACMS long-range missiles overnight into the Bryansk area of Russian territory. And I hope all of you realize how incredibly serious that is. And Jay said they've had the missiles for about 8 months. Thank you for that, Jay. And it's a terrifying thought of what could potentially take place here. Good morning, Annette and Linda. Putin has been very clear from the beginning about many different things. The word nuclear has been tossed around since this special operation started in 2022. It's a word we've become, of course, very familiar with. And we've always known that Putin, of course, these are tactical nuclear weapons. We're talking about tactical nuclear weapons. And of course, has a much smaller strike area than your typical large warhead nuclear weapon. And so it's probably going to escalate very quickly. Will it escalate to a nuclear strike? I don't know. And that is because I think Putin knows that the Biden administration is trying to bait him into a nuclear strike. And if he is smart enough, which I think he is going to withhold as much as he can. Because the last thing we need is World War III, especially at the hands of Democrats in power. But we also have to remember, like we say every single day, the deep state, they are a regime and they've been in power in this country for many, many years. And the deep state, they're going to do anything they can to retain that power. And people can say, well, oh, they're not going to do that. They don't want Americans to be killed. They don't care about us. We are all just pawns in the grand scheme of things. They do not care about us at all. In fact, they probably feel like they would be better without a few million of us. So don't think that we will stand in the way. Allison says North Korea sending 100,000 troops. Not a good sign. No, and they've already sent, I don't know if it's the same 100,000 you're speaking of, but they already have 100,000 troops already on the front lines in already in Russia. Now, perhaps they're sending more. I don't know, but that is certainly a concern because Kim Jong Un is completely unhinged. Who knows what that guy might do? Who knows what anybody might do right now? Everything's up in the air. But I will tell you, it is a very serious situation. Europe is already preparing for war. Finland is warning their citizens to be prepared. Sweden, Stockholm, they dropped thousands of pamphlets. They went door to door giving people pamphlets called I believe it was called "In Crisis of War" was the heading on these pamphlets, explaining to people how to take precautions, what type of supplies you need to have in your home. I think that a lot of countries, particularly European countries, really do worry what may happen, what may come, and especially with Putin throwing around the nuclear word so freely. In fact, he, went as far as to update their nuclear doctrine. I'm going to play a video in a few minutes of Putin, of course, talking about this nuclear doctrine. And there were two key points that they updated the nuclear doctrine to state. One is bringing Belarus into the picture. We've heard for quite some time now, probably since 2022, that Putin would like to hold and potentially detonate or launch, I is probably the better word, nuclear weapons from Belarus. And so the new wording in this nuclear doctrine states that they can use Belarus, they can store nuclear weapons, they can launch nuclear weapons from Belarus. And it also updates their options of bringing a non-nuclear country into their protection, which of course is Belarus. Belarus does not have their own nuclear weapons. So therefore, they're going to be now held under the protection of Russia. And that's extremely important. And there's a lot of countries who said that if Belarus has nuclear weapons on its soil, that alone will start World War III. So we'll see where that portion of the nuclear doctrine takes us. The second part of the nuclear doctrine that was changed was to add some wording so that Russia can strike a non-nuclear country, meaning Ukraine. So Ukraine doesn't have their own nuclear weapons, but they are sponsored by the United States, and we do have nuclear weapons. And so therefore, the doctrine has stated, now states anyway, that Russia can attack a country with nuclear weapons, a non-nuclear country, if they are sponsored by a country that does have nuclear weapons. So I'm sure you can see where the stage is setting up for that, and you can certainly hear it in Putin's own words. It is really a very serious situation. And Jay says North Carolina. Where's my mind at today? North Korea is afraid of Trump. Crazy or not, the leaders there aren't stupid. I agree. North Korea is scared of Trump because Trump is very unpredictable. That's part of the endearment I think we have for Trump and why his foreign policy works. Because guess what? If you mess with the United States under Donald Trump, he is not playing around. He will come and get you, as will Putin. People don't mess around with Putin either. That's why you don't see a lot of the crazy junk going on in Russia that you see in other countries, because that man does not put up with much at all. He runs a very tight ship. And Allison says, I heard Trump is in talks with Putin. He has been in talks with Putin since day one. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that he hasn't been in talks with Putin the entire time he wasn't even in office. If I heard that, it wouldn't surprise me, even though it's not technically what former presidents do. But we know Obama does. Obama, even though he hasn't been president for quite some time, he still goes around and meets with world leaders. So can Trump do it? Yes. But Trump has been in talk with Putin since since he won the election and even prior to winning the election. And that's why I said, if Putin can hold his cool and he doesn't fall for the bait, which of course Democrats are trying to bait him, then perhaps he can hold off until Trump is inaugurated and the policies change. Because we already see, even though Trump has not been certified or inaugurated yet, that a lot of policies are already changing because a lot of these different branches know the change is coming. So they may as well start implementing them now. Particularly a lot of branches who probably didn't like working under the Biden administration, all their ridiculous DEI policies, and so on. So a lot of those branches have already started changes. But here's the thing. And if you go back and you listen to Putin years ago, Putin was very clear in a video that he made. And he talked about when he was a child, how he grew up in an apartment building and that housed a lot of Jews, by the way, which is why he is so close with a lot of the Israelis and a lot of the Jews in his country, because that's where he grew up. He actually, his family was actually Jewish, and then they converted to, I believe it was Russian Orthodox. You can correct me on if I'm wrong on that, but I know he was born a Jew. And he grew up in this apartment complex. They were very poor, and there were rats in the building. And Putin has made this so clear. He's as a matter of fact, he's released several videos going over this exact story. And he talks about how every day, he would, be a kid trampling around as an apartment, and these rats would be everywhere. But he allowed the rats to be. He didn't mess with them. He allowed the rats to be. And then he said one day he was playing with some toys. He was in a corner. The rats backed him into a corner. And then he had no choice but to act because he was backed into the corner, and then he killed the rats. And I think that's a very important analogy coming from Putin. Whether it's true, whether he made it up, I don't know. But that is the story he's been telling for many, many years. And I've talked about it many times in my prior shows. And I think that's exactly what's happening right now. We have been poking at Putin long before 2022, when this entire incursion into Ukraine took place. We were poking at him long before that. And a lot of course, the propaganda and the lies during the Cold War, Russia has never been our enemy. Putin has never been our enemy. The guy is not a communist. He's never even ruled under communism. And people want, as a matter of fact, his values are very traditional. The values of his country are very traditional. Russia would be the right wing, very far right wing, as we are in the United States. That's how it is in Russia. Now, of course, they have progressives as well that are trying to change things, but overall, they have very traditional values in Russia. And I think that Putin can only be poked so much, and he's probably at the end of his rope. If we have allowed and have supplied, that's the more important part, supplied these long-range missiles to Ukraine. Ukraine has now launched 6 of them into Russian territory. I think that would be considered backing Putin into a corner. And there's a lot that's going to take place, a lot we have to watch. Jay says that region of the world has been throwing that word around since the 70s. Absolutely true. And Jay, I don't worry about this as much as you do. It's a chess game with major implications, but no major country wants to be the one who fires the first one. I agree to some degree with you, Jay. The problem is that a person can only take so much, and I think Putin has warned us. Look what happened with Ukraine. It was the same thing. He was backed into a corner. The reason why he had that special operation, if you want to call it that, into Ukraine was because for 8 years prior, the Ukrainians, specifically the Azov battalion of Ukraine, the ones that wear the swastikas on their head and the one that have the swastika patches, they were attacking Russian citizens. They were fighting constantly back and forth across that border. And for many months, Trump warned the world, the entire world. I've heard speeches, at some of these summits where he has warned them, if you don't stop Ukraine from firing and killing our citizens, holding our citizens hostage, because, in Mariupol, which is, of course, one of the towns that was liberated in Ukraine, which, of course, was a lot of media propaganda surrounding that area. Well, do you know the Azov battalion had dug a trench around the entire city of Mariupol, and then the entire city, they held the entire city hostage. And these were all Russian-speaking citizens for the most part that lived in Mariupol. The Azovs would control businesses, and they would go into these businesses and they would force these Russian business owners to pay them money. And very mob-like mentality. They were holding people prisoners in that city. People couldn't openly leave. They had checkpoints. And they harassed these people, they beat them, they killed them, many of them went missing. And finally, Putin said, enough, enough. I've had enough of this. I've warned you, warned you, warned you for months now that if you didn't put an end to what's taking place to my people, just because they're over the border in Ukraine, they're still my people. I am going to come in and I am going to liberate these people and I'm going to take these regions back. He warned them. That's what he did, and that incursion would have ended a long time ago. And I think he expected it to end right away had we, the United States, and of course our allies in Europe, got involved. And since that time, we have supplied Ukraine, supplied them with weapons. Of course, what did I say yesterday? $183 billion between cash aid, weapons, etc., into Ukraine. The blood is on our hands. We have kept this war going. And now, of course, everyone's in a panic because, Donald Trump won the election. We have the House, we have the Senate. We are going to be in control. And that is the last thing they want, the deep state wants. That's the last thing they want. They are trying very hard to escalate this situation. And Putin even said himself that the Biden administration is escalating this war. They want me to react. And so can he hold himself? It depends on what they do. These 6 long-range missiles that went into the Bryansk region, I don't know if that's going to be as big of a deal as if it went into some other areas. I think it depends on where they send these long-range missiles. However, now that's me saying that. Putin says that his statements and his integrity are what's most important. And when he says, if you launch long-range weapons into my country, if you carry them across my border, then you leave me no choice but to escalate and to potentially, he's never said he's going to strike with a nuclear weapon, but he said that's going to leave that possibility open. And again, I'm going to play a video for you with his own words. So don't think that it can't happen. Don't think that it can't happen. And Robert says, I think Putin attacked Ukraine for 2 reasons, UN and US biolabs. I'm glad you said that, Robert, because I'm going to get into those biolabs as well and a lot of other things that are going on in Ukraine, and because it all does play into it. And Jay, key word here, the war is going on because Zelensky has Burisma dirt on Hunter and Joe. Well, he did. Here's a very important thing. I don't know if you guys recall, and I'm sure you can go back and play the videos. While I was waiting and counting down when Russia and when Putin was going to go into Ukraine, because you knew it was going to happen. You could see it happen. He was warning it was happening. The news wasn't talking about it, but a lot of other people were. And this was right about my transition from when I left Cancel This and went to Real Talk. Or back then, I take that back. It wasn't Cancel This. We were on the edge. I left the edge and went to Real Talk. And when I was on the edge, we talked a lot about this. And I was always saying, any day now, any day, Putin's going to give that order. They're going to go into Ukraine. And I remember sitting in the Real Talk studios watching it while we were live on air, watching Russia go into Ukraine. And we're like, okay, I fully expected them to go in that day, do what they needed to do, and then leave. And what's crazy about that is that day, I remember, I saw with my own eyes, you saw Russian troops come into Kiev. You saw them scramble into the big buildings and I'm thinking, okay, this is really odd. They're right there in Kiev. They've made their way to Kiev. They're going into these government buildings. What are they doing? Then they leave and then the war, backtracks back into the Donbass and Luhansk region and those areas. And what was interesting about that is the very first thing I did is I looked online at Burisma website and the website was down. So that happened the day of, it may have happened the day before, but the Burisma website was completely down the day of the incursion into Ukraine. And I think that's extremely important because now Putin is turning over documents to media. He's turning over documents to some legal channels in Russia about the collusion between the Biden family and Ukraine. He's talking about the biolabs. He's turning in information about all of these underhanded deals. And we know, Putin hasn't talked about this. We know, what is Ukraine? What does Ukraine stand for? It's a puppet government that we, the United States, put in place. And we fashioned it very much like we do the United States, a puppet government ran by the same regime the same regime that runs the United States. Think of it as a franchise. Think of Ukraine as a franchise. All of the evil doings they do here are triple fold over in Ukraine. We have the bio labs where they do their dirty work. We have the human trafficking, the sex trafficking taking place in Ukraine. We have the organ harvesting taking place in Ukraine. I could go on and on about all of the things that are taking place in Ukraine, not to mention Burisma, all of the money that has switched hands between the Biden family and Ukraine, all of the money laundering that is taking place. We give them $183 billion. And what happens? They all get kickbacks. A lot of the weapons and ammunition and things we send over to Ukraine ends up on the black market. And we know that the terrorists are buying it. It's our way to say, okay, we're going to sell these weapons to, let's say, ISIS as an example, but we can't sell it to them directly. So we're going to send these weapons to Ukraine. Somebody in Ukraine who's not accountable is going to put these on the black market, and then the terrorists are going to buy them. And then the money is going to trickle back to us and go back in our pockets. It's such a bigger deal than you'll ever hear on the news, or even most people even talk about. There's so much going on in Ukraine. Ukraine is a puppet government, but it's more than that. It is our evil twin sister. It is the deep state running all of the things they can't get away with here in the US. They're doing it all in Ukraine legally. And we know. Why do you think they're paying Zelensky? He's a comedian, for gosh sakes. Why do you think they're paying this guy 40 something billion dollars? Because he is their face. He's hiding it, and he's a pretend president. And Jay, how much is unaccounted for? A lot is unaccounted for. And yes, Jay, they could have easily taken Kiev and left. They could have easily done that, but they didn't. Now this is just my opinion. I think that the first thing Russia did, Putin's a smart man. What would you do? If you went to your enemy's home, what would be the first thing you did? I absolutely believe that day that when Russia came in, the very first thing they did is they went to Kiev, they went to all of these key areas, and they took the files. Now, of course, there's more files they probably didn't get, and copies of files and everything else. So yes, Zelensky certainly has a lot over the Biden family as well as the deep state, because the deep state's so much more than the Biden family. Biden is no different really than Zelensky. Harris is no different than Zelensky. Obama, I think that's a different story with him. I think a lot of these presidents we've had are exactly like Zelensky. They're just a puppet for a puppet government. But Trump is not. Trump is not a puppet. Trump's administration is certainly not a puppet administration. And that's why the deep state fears them. And the reason why I'm so concerned about the situation between Russia and Ukraine is that I think the deep state will stop at absolutely nothing to keep Trump from taking office again. I really do. I think they'll stop at nothing. But they can't just come out. It would be easy to say, well, if they really didn't want Trump to be president, they would contest the election. Or they're not going to do that. Or what is their motto right now? Oh, a peaceful transfer. Everything's going to be a peaceful transfer of power. Well, that's what they want it to outwardly look like. But there are so many ways they can make sure a peaceful transfer doesn't happen without ever, raising a little finger to make it seem like they are the ones causing the problem. And so I think we really do need to keep an eye on it. Is Russia going to launch a nuclear weapon into Ukraine? I doubt it. I really do doubt it. But could it happen? Absolutely, yes. Should you be prepared? Absolutely, yes. There's a lot of things in this country right now we need to be prepared for. And later on, I'm going to get into the Antifa side of things we need to be prepared for. But war is certainly it. And what have we said? We know the playbook. We've known the playbook since day one, haven't we? What did they do to Trump? And how many times have I said this, and have you guys all said it back and forth? What did they do first to Trump? They tried to prosecute him. They came after him with everything they had to put him in jail. Failed. They tried to bankrupt him. Remember that? 400 and something $1 million in civil suits. They tried to bankrupt him. They failed, right? They tried to assassinate him, 3 times? Failed. And everything they try fails. They tried to beat him in an election. Failed. They tried the war of celebrity endorsements. Big failure. And they've tried everything down the line. What is there left for them to do? Because certification is coming along really quick. Inauguration coming around really quick. I mean, we're at the end of of November. January 20th is right around the corner. They have to act fast. How far are they willing to go? Because everything they've planned so far, and if you think an assassination attempt, I think that's pretty darn far. And they just missed him by a millimeter. And if they're willing to go that far, why wouldn't they start a war? And are they going to continue to poke Putin into taking the bait? Putin's a smart man again. He knows they're trying to prod him into a full-scale war. And of course, then they'll blame it on him. It won't be their fault. They'll blame it on him. So that's something to think about. I'm going to play that video from Putin here in just a second. And let's see, Lori, can you give me the definition of deep state? It is the men behind the curtain, like George Soros. George Soros, most certainly. Alex Soros, most certainly. As a matter of fact, Alex Soros posted I think it was on, I don't know if it was on X, I can't remember, where he had a media posting of Ukraine being given the authorization to use long-range missiles. And he said, oh, that's great. Of course it's great for him, because he would love to start World War III, wouldn't he? He and his psychopathic father. The deep state, Tulsi Gabbard best described the deep state. If you want to get into names, who is part of the deep state, there are so many different names that come across. And obviously names change and families change as time progresses. We have people that pass on, others that take their place. Who is the primary? Honestly, I don't know. I think part of the European Parliament, part of the European Union, the heads of that are certainly involved. Obviously, the Obamas are heavily involved. The Soroses heavily involved. There's a lot of different names. You can go back to the Rockefellers and the Bilderbergs and all of these different people. And to me, the names don't matter, quite honestly, which is why I don't typically refer to names. The names don't matter. The fact is, our country is ran by a puppet government. The people you see are not really doing a whole lot of anything. And when Democrats control, that is. When Republicans control, it's some Republicans, it's a different story. But unfortunately, we're in a state in this country where even the Republicans in Congress are bought and paid for. Not all of them. And that is why Trump has nominated the people he has nominated, because these are people he can trust. It doesn't matter what they've done in the past. It doesn't matter what their jobs were in the past, what qualifications or skills they have. None of that matters. All that matters is these are people that we can trust. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a bit. I want to play for you guys this video by Putin. It's 3 minutes long, 3.5 minutes long, but I think it's important because you know what? I can talk all I want about what Putin thinks and what Putin says, but you can hear it directly from him, of course, through a translator. So I'm going to play this for you all really quick, and then you can come to your own conclusions.
In the updated version of the document, aggression against Russia by any non-nuclear state, but with the support of a nuclear state, is proposed to be considered as their joint attack on Russia. Russia will also consider the possibility of using nuclear weapons when receiving reliable information about a massive launch of means of aerospace attack and their crossing of our state border. This includes strategic and tactical aircraft, as well as cruise missiles and drones, hypersonic and other delivery vehicles. Russia reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in case of aggression, including if the enemy, using conventional weapons, poses a critical threat.
It is important to note at this point that these are, at this time, proposals to amend Russia's nuclear weapons use doctrine. We heard from Vladimir Putin multiple scenarios in which the rules and regulations governing how Russia can use its nuclear weapons will change. The first scenario is if a non-nuclear power attacks Russia with conventional arms but poses a grave or critical threat to Russia's sovereignty, the Russian leadership will be able to use nuclear weapons to neutralize that threat. The second scenario and how things will change is if that non-nuclear power that is attacking Russia is aided, supplied, abetted by a nuclear power, then that nuclear power will be considered a party to this conflict. So a joint attack on Russia, which will mean Russia will be able to use nuclear weapons both on the non-nuclear power and the nuclear power that it will consider attacking it. Also, Russia will be able to use, preemptively perhaps use, nuclear weapons if there is verified information, proof that there is an ongoing attack on Russia using aerospace aerospace assets, or for example, a mass launch of drones. Again, I must mention
I am sorry with my sound. User error. That is just my fault. I muted myself during the video, so I am so sorry. What I was saying is that, as you heard in this video, that in the video they talk about, well, what if Ukraine uses these long-range missiles? What if the United States supplies these long-range missiles? And yesterday it was all a what if. Today it has already happened. And what I was saying, when you guys unfortunately couldn't hear me, is that I haven't heard anything yet from the Russia side. I haven't heard any statements from Putin or any of his advisors. They may have come through after I've started the show this morning, but I was kind of waiting for some type of statement. And at that time, when I started the show, I hadn't heard anything. So I do not yet know how Russia is going to respond to the launch of these 6 long-range missiles into the Bryansk region of Russia. And so it's I think with Putin, I think the region does matter. You know, if they send these long-range missiles into Moscow, guess what? We are definitely going to have a nuclear war on our hands. There's no question about it. If they send them into some of these other regions where they're already fighting, maybe his response won't be quite as strong. The Bryansk region, I think, is an area that he's not going to react as strongly to. And maybe that's why they sent the long-range missiles there. Maybe they're testing to see how he reacts. Maybe there was just something there that they wanted to attack. I know they did launch those 6 missiles towards a certain type of facility. I haven't heard yet what was housed in that facility. But again, as Allison brought up, we have North Korea now in the mix. We have Europe giving these warnings to their citizens. Now, of course, a lot of these, European countries border Russia, so it's more of a concern to them. But I hope you heard about the doctrine in that video and how it pointed out that we, the United States, being that we are the nuclear country that supplied Ukraine with these long-range ATACMS missiles, that also makes us a warring party. That by Ukraine launching these long-range missiles into Russian territory, that we have started a war with Russia. I hope that you understood the wording that was so important in Putin's statement, because it does. Ukraine is like a proxy. Iran has proxies. All these different countries have proxies that go out and fight their wars for them, and then the countries kind of get away without a whole lot of blame. Well, in this case, Ukraine is our proxy. We are supplying them with weapons. And how far are we willing to go? And it's so ridiculous, isn't it? To me, this is like the most ridiculous thing. And Trump, once he is inaugurated, obviously he's going to put an end to all of this craziness, all of it. But how are they going to let that happen? Because we all know Trump will very likely expose everything that we all already know is going on in Ukraine. He's going to end the aid to the government of Ukraine. I know he's going to continue to help the people. And he's already creating peace. What was it? Hezbollah and who was the other group? Hezbollah and Lebanon troops have already said that they would go along with a ceasefire against Israel. No, not Hamas, just Lebanon troops and, of course, Hezbollah. So, there's already peace being created ahead of a Trump presidency, branches falling into line. and these things are happening very rapidly. However, I don't know what to expect when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, because there's so many what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. Yesterday it was a what if again, if they were going to send these launch these long range missiles into Russia. Well, now we know they have, and they will probably continue to do so. And they're going to keep poking at Putin until he is backed into that corner, and then he has no choice but to react. And what that reaction will be, I don't know. But I do know that he is probably counting down the days till Donald Trump steps in office. But how far are they willing to go? How far are they willing to poke Putin to start a nuclear war or to start any war, just so they can hold on to power, just so they can protect their secrets? Because think about the bigger picture. When we Americans find out, when the world finds out what is taking place in Ukraine, when all of the things that we believe are true, that we know are true, when those things are revealed to actually be true, how many times us conspiracy theorists have been proven right? We've had so many different conspiracies, of course, which are intimidation tactics for them to call them conspiracies. And later on, it was confirmed to be true. Not that we think it's true, it was confirmed to be true, right? Pizzagate being the most recent one. Again, if you missed that show, that is actually true. It's true. The person who defended it and said it wasn't true got caught with hundreds of very vile child pornography. He was producing the pornography. Pizzagate was real. And they want to tell us these things weren't real. I didn't even believe it was real, quite honestly, until I saw that the guy was arrested and heard the heinous acts he was committing against children, he himself. And then I thought, oh my gosh, it's, all of these things we all thought and heard are actually true. And that's the case with Ukraine as well. And what's going to happen, and how far are they willing to go to protect the secrets? And then once the secrets are out, what's going to happen to all of these people who were part of these biolabs, the NIH, Dr. Fauci, the Biden family, whoever the dark secret members of the deep state are? What's going to happen to all these people? Are they going to get prosecuted? Are they going to go to prison? Are they going to be assassinated? What's going to happen to these people? And I can absolutely guarantee you that these people are going to do anything they can to keep their secrets keep their secrets in the dark. Joe Adams, has the election made the Democrats more dangerous or less dangerous? Joe, I think I know your answer, and my answer is absolutely far more dangerous, because they are all now going to be facing treason. I mean, potentially treason charges, conspiracy, sedition. There are so many different charges these people could face, and the death penalty for many of the things that they have done. But more than anything, it's the opinion of the American people. Because guess what? If we find out the truth, if it's revealed to the masses of what really took place in Ukraine, what Ukraine is really used for, and again, what is it used for? Trafficking, drug trafficking, human trafficking, organ harvesting, sex trafficking, money laundering, biological warfare. There are so many things that are taking place. Selling arms to terrorists. All of this is taking place in Ukraine. Ukraine's like a big shell country. That's all it is. When these secrets are known by the masses, Democrats will never have power again. They will never come into power in this country. And I think that they are willing to risk it all to retain that power and to keep those secrets. And Colonel Joe Adams, I really do hope that you are joining us tomorrow morning. We'll be talking about that later, because I can't wait to hear what Colonel Joe Adams has to say about everything that's going on, and if he thinks the possibility of a nuclear strike into, could potentially into the United States. I don't expect that to happen, but into Ukraine, and I'm talking about tactical nuclear weapons, by the way, into Ukraine. Is it possible? And think about this also. Do Democrats even care? Does the deep state even care? I'm going to say no, they don't. If they keep poking at Putin to launch a tactical nuclear weapon into Ukraine, does the deep state even care? No, because you know what? They don't care about Ukraine. That's their little utopia of crimes and criminal activity. If it's all destroyed, the better for them, less evidence against them. So don't think that these things can't happen. What can you do to prepare for the possibility of war, I think most of you already know, and you can reach out to, of course, Colonel Joe Adams if you have any fears or hesitancy into what you can possibly do yourself. You can go to WashingtonGuard.com, of course, or you can email them at patriots@WashingtonGuard.com if you just want a little bit of safety net there to join the Washington Guard and find out information how you can do that. A lot of you are not in Missouri. You're not near the Washington Guard. And I would say the best rule of practice, like anything, this is no different than any other scenario, is just make sure you're prepared in your home. Make sure you have supplies in your home. I absolutely do not expect any type of nuclear attack to happen in the United States. I think that I don't even see any possibility of that happening at all. In Ukraine, yes. In the United States, I'm going to say no. And I'll be, again, curious what Colonel Joe Adams has to say tomorrow on that. But either way, things can happen here in this country, even if it's not nuclear weapons. And I think every American should always have a supply. For me personally, I think you should have a 3-month supply at least. Colonel Joe Adams will probably say a year or 7 years. I think at the very minimum, a 3-month supply. The most important, water. Learn from our friends, unfortunately, in the Blue Ridge Mountains who had to survive Hurricane Helene, and water was the most precious thing that they all didn't have and needed. Because, we have these Antifa folks, that's another whole other situation that's going on who are threatening, Antifa right now. Antifa is recruiting people to join their Antifa army, and they want to create chaos across the country. And what do communists do? We've seen videos of the communists out marching around the United States in different areas, most recently in Columbus, Ohio. And what do people like Antifa do? They want to cause chaos, and they take advantage of situations that are already chaos. And they're going to take advantage of this transition of power. They're going to take advantage of the fear that we already have of what's going on between Russia and Ukraine. And they are absolutely going to act. Don't think they're not going to. The Antifa and Antifa-like folks in this country are absolutely going to do something. What are they going to do? There's a lot of options. A lot of options. I do know they are recruiting for new members. They're trying to get people to join their forces. And some of the things that have been thrown out there is attacking the water supply, attacking the power grid, attacking trains as far as damaging train tracks so that there are collisions, that type of thing. They are talking about attacking. I don't think they have the ability to attack satellites. I heard somebody throw that out there. I don't even think that's within their realm. I've never heard of Antifa as being hackers. We could face foreign adversaries, of course, in hacking. Iran is certainly not going to be happy about Donald Trump becoming president. Iran, they have some good hackers over there. But what we do have to worry about is how far, again, we're worried about how far Russia is willing to go. How far is Antifa willing to go? Because really, think about this. It's all backed by the same people, isn't it? It's all backed by the same people. The deep state is funding Ukraine to start a war with Russia. The deep state is funding Antifa to start a war with us Americans. So they're very much interconnected. And so we have Antifa recruiting members to do God knows what, to us all. What exactly are they going to do? We don't know. The only thing we can do is prepare for anything. Buy a solar charger if you have the ability to do so. You can buy little solar chargers, let's say just for a cell phone, on Amazon for $20. You can buy, water tanks, water barrels to collect rainwater. We're certainly going to have enough rain and snow probably in the near future. There's a lot of different things you can do. I thank God I'm very lucky. I have a natural spring on the property here and a well with very clean well water. And I realize not everybody has that. And trust me, if things get crazy, come to me. I will give you some well water. It's very clean. As a matter of fact, the well that we have way back in the day, from what I understand, people in the town before these houses were built came here, and this is where they got their water to drink and to bathe with and everything else. We have to help our neighbors first and foremost. If you have people in your community that you're worried about who really have no idea what's going on, help them prepare. Make sure they have supplies for at least 3 months, and make sure those supplies are not all canned goods, because if something happens and you have to flee your home, you're not going to carry a backpack of 300 pounds of cans. So certainly don't do that. Robert says pictures on our money suggest a tsunami hits New York City. I've heard that theory. Possibly a nuclear attack like Fukushima. Also a possibility. And thank you, Scott, for joining us this morning. And Jay says, I don't see Trump wanting any of them prosecuted in the name of unity, unfortunately. I'm back and forth with that, Jay. I don't know. I think Trump learned some lessons his last go around. The last go around, remember, we all thought, oh, he's going to prosecute, he's going to go after the Clintons. He didn't. He didn't go after anyone, quite honestly. Some people lost their jobs, but he did not prosecute anyone. And I think that he learned his lesson, that he didn't step up enough to go after the deep state and after these people who wanted to cause him harm. And instead, they spent their 4 years going after him nonstop. And I think he learned his lesson. And think about this, we've learned a lot more in the past 4 years. I think when it comes to the children, and the children are the people who are really being harmed here, look at Ukraine and the organ harvesting that's taking place there. That's mostly children. The sex trafficking, again, mostly children. And I really think when it comes to children and the things that affects children, I do think Trump is going to go after these people with everything he has to make sure that he protects at least the children. So I think this time around, we are going to see prosecutions. I really do. I really, really do. And let's see, Allison, at the Washington Guard Muster Saturday, they had a vendor selling MRE ready meals. I bought several. Good morning, Tammy Jerry Hoover. And, Allison, MRE ready meals are certainly a good option. You can, if you have an Instant Pot, a lot of people have Instant Pots. As a matter of fact, I have 2 Instant Pots and I have one of those Ninja Foodies. All 3 of those you can dehydrate food in. And of course, you can buy a separate dehydrator. Right now is deer season. You can either go out and get your own deer, buy someone else's deer. There's a lot of different ways to come across some more inexpensive meat that you can turn into jerky or otherwise somehow process it, dehydrate it, freeze dry it. A lot of communities have a community freeze dryer. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. And I've heard that you can call your city clerk and ask if your city has a freeze dryer and how to reach the person that has it. You can reach out to some of your farmers. Some of them have freeze dryers. Freeze dried food, dehydrated foods are the best thing you could have in any crazy situation. Water, number one, cannot live without water. A stockpile of medicines. A lot of times you can call your pharmacy and ask if you can get 3 months worth of medicine, 90 days worth of a medication versus just a month. That way you have extra on hand. A lot of things to think about. I will never believe that we're going to have a nuclear strike in the United States. I don't believe it. And I can't wait to hear what Joe Adams says. I don't think we personally need to prepare for a nuclear strike in our country, but that's something you can prepare for if you think it's important. And Allison says, a freezer full of deer meat. Yes, except for that, Allison, you'll really have to cook a lot if something happens. And I'm gonna get to that. Robert, Trump will not prosecute this term, in my opinion. Rubio and the gang of 12 with McCain, Rhino Thunder says a lot as well. We shall see. We definitely shall see. And I hope he does prosecute, because if he doesn't prosecute, we're never going to be able to stop these people. People have to start learning lessons. And I think it was NBC that reported last night that a lot of members of the DOJ, a lot of the members of some of the other intelligence agencies are all seeking criminal attorneys because they are so fearful they're going to be prosecuted. And I hope it happens. Allison, civil unrest. Civil unrest is probably going to happen long before a war takes place. And yes, Robert, Thune is going to be a real problem for us, but Trump's not going to let Thune do anything, because Trump is going to make sure that these folks we have in place, the people that he trusts, he's going to make sure these people do get their nominations and they are appointed to these different positions. And I'm going to get into that also. And back to Allison, what you said about a freezer full of deer meat. We've learned a lot with what took place with Hurricane Helene going through the mountains in Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee. And that is an outdoor kitchen is very handy, very handy. If you have a power outage, I am far more worried about Antifa in the United States than I am anything going on with Russia. And I'm worried about what might happen to the deep state in that whole interchange. And maybe they won't allow Trump to be president because of a war. Obviously, that's a huge fear. But as far as our day-to-day safety, I am far more worried about Antifa and Antifa-like folks, because they are not going to take this transition very well. As a matter of fact, what are we seeing? I just read this yesterday. It was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We have super far left liberals who are drinking seed oils. Have you seen these videos? There are videos of these people. They shave their heads in protest of Donald Trump and, of course, us Trump supporters, and they're just guzzling seed oils. And I'm like, why are you doing this? Of course, to protest, Robert Kennedy, of course, also being working in our health sector. But come on, what are you going to accomplish drinking gallons of seed oil? You're just going to make yourself sick. But these people are unhinged. They've lost their minds. And some of them, of course, not all of them, some of them are also very dangerous. And as they continue to recruit Antifa, as the media continues to build up the hate and everything else that's taking place, and the media is absolutely to blame for so much of the hatred that's taking place in this country. One thing, though, going back to getting prepared, if you can, set up an outdoor kitchen. Make sure you have plenty of propane. If you already have a Blackstone grill, that will work perfectly. If you have a barbecue grill, whatever it is you have, make sure you have fuel to cook your food outside. And that is most important, because a lot of what you do inside may not be accessible. And the folks during Helene and after Helene, there are still people right now who are living in tents where their homes used to be and cooking on outdoor stoves. If you can find an old wood burning stove, me personally, I like cooking over a campfire. That's my particular favorite method with wood. Make sure you're stocked up on wood. There's a lot of things you can do, and we're going to talk about this in the coming days. A lot of things you can do to make sure you are prepared for whatever that might be. Being well armed, also number one, because what do you think is going to happen to a lot of these people who aren't prepared? And I hate to say this, and I'm not downing Democrats. It's not about Democrats, the party Democrats. It's about people on the far left they don't understand any of this. They don't think any of this is going to happen. And what happens when they start running out of food? Well, they don't have weapons for the most part. Some of them do. And they're going to come for you. They're going to come for your food. You've got a nice wood burning stove outside or a barbecue grill. Guess what? They're going to come and take it. So you have to be prepared to not only protect yourself, but to protect your neighbors and your community. Because if your neighbors go down, guess what? You're next to follow. So we all need to band together. You need to know who your neighbors are, what they stand for, and then you need to come up with a plan, not just for you, but for your neighbors and your community. So those are some things to think about. Allison says a solar cooker. Yes, that's a good idea. I think anything solar charging is perfect. I have a lot of solar lights and solar cameras and different things that I think are very important, solar chargers for cell phones and so on. There's a lot of different things that you can have, but that's, to me, the most concerning factor is what Antifa may do in our country. I'm very leery right now of public water, city water, because even though it looks fine, how do we know they're not going to poison our water? I'm very worried about that possibility, because how can they affect so many people without shutting the water down, without being obvious? And we already know, don't tell me it's a conspiracy, because we already know Antifa has been caught. The FBI wrote an entire report about it, how Antifa was planning to attack the water supply and how they're planning to attack substations. They already have attacked many substations, quite honestly. And they have the capability of doing a lot of damage right here in our own country. Robert, gangster will become the law, things. What about martial law? It could happen. As a matter of fact, Trump talked about something that, I heard a lot yesterday. We knew this was coming and it's been building up to this. He talked about declaring a national emergency. Now, of course, that's not going to happen until he's inaugurated, if we can get through that point about declaring a national emergency over deportations. He is talking about absolutely mass deportations. So, and Robert, thank you for bringing up gangster, because that's what made me transition into this other thought process, is that ahead of the election, we have a lot of chaos that's taking place in this country. We have, of course, what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. We have what's going on with Antifa. And now, what about illegals? What about the chaos that they can and some will cause between now and the inauguration? There are already videos out there. You can go and look at them. A lot of them are on TikTok. And it is these various people, a lot of these Venezuelan gangs, Tren de Aragua, who are coming out and say, make me leave. We're not leaving. We are not leaving here. A lot of them they said this in a video, and they said that we came here, we impregnated people here on your soil so that we could have children here so that you can't make us leave. Now, of course, Trump has already said one of the very first things he's going to do is he is going to repeal that particular legislation that says if you have a child on our soil, that your child is automatically a citizen, therefore you are also. So that's not going to hold up. Sorry, Venezuelans, that's not going to hold up. But what are we going to do about all of trust me, these people are in a panic. I just talked to you guys yesterday about all of the Haitians in Ohio, in Springfield, Ohio, who are leaving in droves and heading to sanctuary cities. So we're going to have sanctuary cities absolutely inundated. They already are with illegals because they're going to be leaving all of these communities in which they think deportations will be easy, particularly if you're in a red state. They're going to be leaving your area most likely, and they're all going to be heading out to these blue states and these areas that will provide them sanctuary. And of course, California, I feel bad for anyone in California because I've heard that a lot of them are going to California because Governor, of course, Gavin Newsom has said he will protect them. And of course, as have other city mayors and other people within California said they will absolutely protect these people. New York has said the same thing. A lot of different areas are planning protections for illegals. But what's going to happen between now and then? What are they going to do? Trump's cutting off their food vouchers, right? He's cutting off all of the streamline of taxpayer money that's going to fund these people. They're going to have acts of desperation between now and January. They're not going to wait until January to freak out. They're freaking out right now. You can see the videos, you can read the reports. They're freaking out right now. And what are these people going to do? There's a lot of them who probably think they could either join Antifa. There's a lot of them who think they can uprise on their own. And are they going to come to your home? Are they going to come to your house and take what you have? It's already happening. So who's to say it's not going to happen on a larger scale? So I don't want to scare anybody. I don't want to be a fearmonger. I just want to make sure that people are prepared because there's a lot of people out there right now that are already here in our country who want to cause us harm. We have to be prepared for that in every way. I actually got chills just saying that. We have to be prepared in every way for these things to happen because they can happen and they are happening. And we have millions of people here in the United States who fear deportation and they fear what's going to happen to them when Donald Trump is elected. So therefore, we really need to keep our heads on a swivel and we have to see what's happening around us. And I really do mean that. And I absolutely do mean that. When you're out and you're driving or you're walking, you're shopping, Christmas shopping is coming up. A lot of people are already out Christmas shopping. When you're out, you're distracted, you've got a lot of stuff going on. Please try to stay focused. Try to observe everything around you. Watch the vehicles around you. Watch the people around you. When you're driving, pay attention to the vehicles behind you, in front of you, on the sides of you. Anything. I am not kidding you. Keep your heads on a swivel. And it's not just because you're conservative. It's because you're American. That's it. And you might be the most liberal person on the planet, but you know what? These people have no idea who you are or what your beliefs are. Everyone needs to be really careful because they're going to be going into a money grab prior to deportation. And guess whose money that is they're going to be grabbing? It's going to be yours. So be very careful when you're out shopping and don't leave your purses unattended. If you stop and get gasoline, do not leave your purse on the seat next to you. When you stop to get gasoline, put your purse down somewhere where it's not in view. Take your keys out of the car, lock your doors, get your gas, then get back in your car and go. If you're shopping, do not sit in your car texting. Don't sit on your car on the phone. Be very careful where you've parked. Again, watch the cars next to you because these people are going to try to grab as much money as they can before they're deported. So please be aware. And let's see, Robert says, I always worry about wintertime. Governments go against the people. Summertime, the people go against the government. You know why, Robert? Because we're all cold in the winter. We don't want to get out and fight when it's cold. I'm like, I always say, if anything ever happens to me, I hope to God it's not cold outside because I can't stand the cold weather. But speaking of that, that's another thing though to consider is that we are heading into cold weather. I don't know about where all of you are located. In my area, today is going to be the last beautiful day. And then tomorrow, I think we're going to have a high of like 50. And then after that, the highs are going to be in the 40s and it's going to continue most likely to decline. And Robert says food, also, yes, also important. And at least it's hunting season right now. I know I'm probably the craziest person on the planet. And we have, a few acres here at the house and there's a lot of deer here, a lot of squirrels, not a lot of rabbits because we have a lot of hawks and owls and things that get the smaller animals. But I have chickens for eggs. That's something else to think about. Chickens are very easy. You can go out to just about any farm, or you can look online and find adult chickens that are already laying eggs. And a lot of people even give them away for free at times if they have too many. So there's plenty of ways to get food depending on where you live and who reach out to those farmers, have a plan in place. That's the most important thing, is to have a plan in place to make sure that you have a food supply if anything gets crazy. So I wanted to go over that, but there's a lot of other things I want to talk about before we get too far. That was obviously important to talk about that. But going back to what's happening in Ukraine is I want to show you, are you guys familiar with Scott Bennett? He is a whistleblower and he is really coming out hard about these bioweapon labs that are over in Ukraine. And I want you guys to hear what he has to say. This is a really short video, because it just plays into everything that's going on right now. And it is the reason why we all need to be alarmed, and we all have to wonder how far will the deep state go to protect their assets in Ukraine and to keep themselves out of prison, of course, for all of the wrongdoings that have taken place. So take a look at this. Oh, well, it would help if we had sound. I'm not doing too good with my sound today, am I? So let me backtrack here. We're going to get some sound. And then I'm going to play this clip for you. Here we go.
We knew over a year ago about these biolabs and their experiments and the documents. We knew about the contractors. We knew about it originally starting in 2005 with the Defense Intelligence Agency that then created a 501c3 called the Global Viral Forecasting Institute with a Zionist Mossad operative named Nathaniel Wolf that then became Metabiota to make it more of a harmless name. And that Metabiota was being funded by Rosemont Fonseca, an investment firm that, ironically enough, Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden, was the head of, along with Christopher Hines, who was the son of John Kerry, and Paul Pelosi Jr., the son of Nancy Pelosi. So this is a incestuous, corrupt, criminal racketeering operation that the West has been developing under Obama, under Biden, under, for the last 10 years, for the purposes of generating DNA, biological, chemical warfare to use against the Russians. That's why they've been collecting DNA samples from Slavic people. And of course, all of the documents and the evidence that General Igor Krylyov has found and commented on are all being exposed as revelations of a massive, really war crime against humanity, because it's a violation of the Global Biological Chemical Weapons Agreement. It's really showing that America, with its 30 biolabs in Ukraine, was involved in experimentation on animal-to-human transmission, which is precisely the origin of COVID-19. So I think you're going to see all this research that was conducted in Ukraine be directly connected to COVID-19. And there you have Pandora's box that was created and opened by the United States of America.
Think about that. Think about that. Think about that. As the days progress, as you hear about these long-range missiles being used in Russia, from Ukraine into Russia, as you hear about Antifa, again, funded by the deep state, think about all these things and think about what they have to protect, and think about why it's not going to be an easy transition of power. On the outward shell, it's going to look like an easy transition of power, but it is not going to be an easy transition of power. And speaking of not being an easy transition of power, thank you, Ryan. Ryan said, don't forget, Judge Merchan is supposed to decide if Trump has immunity today. My personal thoughts, and I'm probably wrong, but my personal thoughts are they're going to drop these charges against Trump. And the reason why is that these charges would have never even occurred if they hadn't weaponized the Department of Justice and all of these intelligence agencies against Trump. It was all fake. It was all make believe. They came up with these charges out of nowhere just to make sure Trump didn't run. And I really do think that they wanted him to back out of the election. Had he backed out, I think these charges would have went away a long time ago. But he didn't. Trump is doing this for us and for the future of our country. This is not for himself. And if he could have a much easier life without this election and without trying to be president, because man, they have come after this man with everything they have and more. And I really do think they're going to drop the charges because there's no basis behind the charges. These were just ridiculous things they filed just to keep him from running. That's my personal opinion. We'll see how things progress. And if they do try to sentence him or, continue on, well, guess what? It's going to be tied up in court for years. And it probably won't even be resolved until after his 4-year term is over. So I think the charges are a non-issue for Donald Trump. I don't expect anything to come from that at all. What I think is the bigger issue, though, is what they're coming after, Gaetz with Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. What they're going to come after with Pete Hegseth. They're going to come after him hard. They already are. And Kennedy, they're coming after him. And why? We know why they're in these positions. Trump chose them because they are loyal to him, because these people believe this is a movement. This is not an election. It's not a 4-year term. This is a movement. And it's so much bigger than any of these people. It's so much bigger than Donald Trump. It is about finally, people of the world being able to live in peace. Because who causes all of the violence and terrorism? It's the deep state that runs our country. They're the ones who fund all the terrorists. We know that. They're the ones who start all of these wars. We certainly know that. The world knows that. And it's finally about getting that foot in the door, which is Trump. He's the facilitator to this bigger movement of peace and unity and health. And all of these people that he's nominated are all key players in this movement of progressiveness going forward into a better way of life. And it's so sad that Democrats don't even see this. And I'm so glad so many of them are waking up and starting to see the light that this isn't about an election. It's not about Trump. It's about something so much bigger that we're all moving towards. And we're going to see, Trump calls it the golden age. And I couldn't describe it any better. We are certainly heading into the golden age. And Robert says, I think Trump worked so hard to get elected to avoid prison. They were going to put him away to dissuade other non-politicians from ever running against them. Robert, you're right, because it's about so much more than Trump. And Trump is the only person right now that could potentially beat the deep state. He is the only one, and they know that. And they know that if he continued to run and he became president, that this time around, he's not going to be playing around. He's going to make sure the deep state is never back. They never hold that office. They no longer have control over us, the United States. They might as well pack their bags and move to Ukraine, which is, I think, on the agenda for a lot of them, is to move to Ukraine, because Ukraine, they control the laws. That can be their safe haven. So let's hope all of that happens, because we do not want them here. But in the meantime, we have to make sure that these nominees are appointed to these positions. Thune is going to stand in the way. Donald Trump has already warned him, do not stand in the way, because I will use whatever powers the Constitution allows me to make sure that these people get in these roles. Recessing appointments, whatever it is he needs to do, Donald Trump has made it very clear that these people will be appointed into these positions. And I'm pretty sure Thune understands the rules, that he better step aside and let it happen, because if he doesn't, he's going to have a lot more to deal with, So I'm going to start out here. I know we have a little bit of time left. I want to start out with Matt Gaetz, because Matt Gaetz is the person, of course, they're going to come after the hardest. And, they want to say he has a shady past. We're going to talk about that. I hesitated playing the video talking about what they accuse him of, simply because I don't want to promote something that I don't believe to be true. However, it's also important for us to be knowledgeable and for us to know what it is they're saying so that we know when we hear it what's being said, what's being talked about, why they're coming against him. So I'm going to play a video for you to show you how they are trying to attack Matt Gaetz. I know most of you already know anyway. And then I'm going to show you a video as to why they're going after Matt Gaetz. And then I think it'll all come together for you, why they hate him so much and why, you know, they're coming up with all these charges. And let me remind you before you watch this video that there was already a very serious investigation into Matt Gaetz and to these allegations that he had an intimate relationship, if they want to call it that, with a minor. And there were no charges filed. The investigation went nowhere. Nothing happened. You know why? Because it's not true. That's why. So, but I want you to hear what they're saying. So we're going to look at this really quick. All right, me again with the sound.
Representative Gaetz. She arrived at the party. She had sex with Representative Gaetz within minutes of her arrival. Later on, when she was walking out to the pool area, she observed to her right Representative Gaetz having sex with her friend who was 17 at the time.
And on this question, she's
absolutely certain that she observed seeing her friend and Representative Gaetz having sex against what she described as a game table of some sort.
If the House Ethics Committee report were to be made public, what do you think it would reveal?
My clients want to know that this happened and it's real. They didn't vote in the last two elections. They don't care one way or another. But they do want the public to know that they're not lying. They did not come forward willingly. They've never spoken to anyone without the force of a legal subpoena. The testimonies of her and the other 11 individuals that testified would show that this actually did happen, and the American people would know, and they could decide if that's the person they want to be the next Attorney General.
All right, so this guy clearly is being paid a lot of money to come out and make these statements, and you can tell by his body language that he is lying through his teeth. And I'm going to show you the real reason why they don't want Matt Gaetz. That's what they want everyone to think. You know, that's what they're going to play on the media. But that's not the truth. You know, I'm going to give you a good reason why they don't like Matt Gaetz.
So where is it? The laptop.
Sir, I'm not here to talk about the laptop. I'm here to talk about the FBI cyber program.
You are the assistant director of FBI cyber. I want to know where Hunter Biden's laptop is. Where is it?
Sir, I don't know that answer.
That is astonishing to me. Now you're telling me right here is that as the assistant director of FBI cyber, you don't know where this is after it was turned over to you 3 years ago.
Yes, sir. That's an accurate statement.
Let's tell you what, Mr. Chairman. I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record of this committee the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop, which I'm in possession of.
Boom, right? Number one reason why they don't like Matt Gaetz is right there for your very eyes. I'm going to show you another reason. I'm going to show you the second reason they don't like Matt Gaetz. And hopefully I'll have better luck playing.
Congressman Gaetz offered to take us on a tour.
So one of the committees where people have a lot of information is the Appropriations Committee, because they can view almost any vector of government funding. And so, you know, this is Mr. Rutherford's office. He's on the Ethics Committee and the Appropriations Committee. 152 stock trades. Stocks go through the roof. And, actually bought Raytheon stock the day that Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if every American could make money off of war.
Yeah, setting aside the whole shame and ethics questions. How many more on our hit list here?
There are a few more. I wish there were fewer on the hit list. I wish we could only stop at one or two offices, but as it turns out, energy is a sector that's congressional stock trading.
Sure.
And we have members who are on the Energy Subcommittee of Appropriations, like Michael Guest, chairman of the Ethics Committee, and he's traded somewhere between tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars in energy stocks. He's been buying online gaming stocks and just making a killing on them. So you would think that the people that were on the Ethics Committee would be your best allies in this fight, but indeed they're some of the most prolific traders. And not only trading, trading, but in the case of Mr. Guest, trading in an area where he has access to energy information more so than almost any other American.
And no indication that he wants to maybe slow down, pump the brakes, recognize that there might be some appearance of impropriety here?
It seems as though the pace is only accelerating.
All right.
Okay, so this is why they don't like Gaetz, clearly. Because why? Because he's telling the truth, that they're all funding off of, they're all making money off of the funding of Ukraine. We all knew that. We all know war makes money, right? But he's offering us proof to the people who don't necessarily believe it. One reason, how did he get the information to the Hunter laptop? How did he have that? Did you see the look on that guy's face? I mean, this is why they don't like Matt Gaetz. It has nothing to do with any inappropriate acts. Those are, of course, that's the propaganda, but this is why they don't like him. And it's the same with the other ones as well. Pete Hegseth, going to be our defense secretary. Why don't they like him? I'm going to show you why they don't like him. And of course, Pete Hegseth is being accused of sexual assault, a relationship that he claims was not a platonic, but a consensual relationship. And so now, of course, they're coming after him. Well, this is why they're coming after Pete Hegseth.
Get out. Get your kids out of government school systems right now, if you can. If you have any way, save money, move, get a second job, don't take the vacation, sell the boat, whatever, drive for Uber. Figure out what you need to do to get your kid out of the government school system, because it's about saving your kid right now. What I want to know is what's being pumped into the minds of those kids. And what you realize when you pull the curtain back over 100 years is the entire pipeline of our education system has been federalized intentionally. And taken over not just by like lefties or technocrats or bureaucrats. Everyone you meet through that timeline who's pushing hard on the shoulder on the plow of education is an atheist, a Marxist, or a socialist, or a humanist. A lot of them are humanists.
What's a humanist?
Humanist is basically completely rejects Christianity or faith at all. And so humanity is at the center of good and evil, right and wrong. It's effectively secularism posited as an alternative religion to Christianity. Oh. So it'll find politics as an avenue. And so humanists are often socialists or Marxists or communists alongside being a humanist. But it's the worship of mankind as the highest being, as opposed to God as the highest being. So they're all, that's the train of people pushing this educational philosophy. And I used to think it started in the 60s. It actually goes back to the progressive era and even before that. But they very intentionally, the one thing they knew they had to remove from the beginning was God. God had to come out of the schools because God was the immovable object that prevented their utopian schemes. They wanted, if you want to manipulate children, if you want to change the way they think, rewire the relationship of families, you have to get at the God thing, because the garden and the sin in the garden is all disrupts those utopian schemes. And so the early progressives, communists, Marxists, very intentionally worked hard in creating systems that slowly but surely removed God. Because if you went into a public school, government school in America in the 1850s or 1870s and 1830s, the Bible's in there, prayers in there, scripture readings in there. It's all in there. So it's a modern court that made all those things unconstitutional based on a misreading of the First Amendment and freedom of religion versus freedom from religion. And the progressives have exploited that. And then the process from there they used patriotism falsely to sort of get rid of God. And then once they built an allegiance to state, and what that was is they replaced basically the cross in the Bible with the flag and a pledge. The original Pledge of Allegiance was written by a socialist minister, and it did not include under God. The Pledge of Allegiance originally didn't include under God. Eisenhower added under God in the 50s when we were fighting the godless communists. So you have a flag and you have a pledge allegiance to the republic. By the way, we're a republic, not a democracy, and our education system pumps democracy down people's throats, and our founders couldn't stand democracy, but that's a whole nother ballgame. The left always changes language. They change language to create an alternate reality, to manipulate human beings into whatever utopian scheme of 15 minutes ago they want to advocate for that increases their power and control. And they saw the government school system as the best entity to do that in. And so they focused and pushed.
we're going to find out why America has the sickest children on the face of the earth. Right? There is no nation in the world that has children as sick as ours. We spend 2 to 3 times what Europeans spend on our health care. And we have the worst health outcomes. We're 79th in the world in health outcomes. We're behind Mongolia, behind Cuba, behind Nicaragua, behind Costa Rica. We've lost 5 years since 1970 in longevity compared to European countries. You know, we're getting shorter and shorter lived every year. During COVID, America had the highest body count of any country in the world. We had 16% of the COVID deaths in our country. We only have 4.2% of the world's population. There's countries, you know, we were told Haiti is going to get wiped out by COVID because they're not going to be able to afford the vaccine. Nigeria is going to be wiped out. That's what Bill Gates and Fauci told us. Well, guess what?
Do this for now. I don't know what happened to the sound. Everything on my end looks fine. Is that better? And can you guys hear me? You're going to hear me a little bit of a different way. I don't know. I'm looking at everything in the background and everything looks perfectly fine. Nothing is muted. I don't know. Is that any better? Oh, complications. I do not know what is going on. I'm looking and looking. All right. Well, hopefully you guys can hear me. Okay, good now. I seriously have no idea. You know, thank you for letting me know. And I really have no idea. Like I said, I've been having a lot of issues. I talked about it on Facebook yesterday, particularly in the last half hour of the show, where I can see your comments, but sometimes I can't. And I don't know what's happening. Like I said this morning when I came in, it looked like there was somebody in the wings waiting to come on to the show, but I didn't send anyone a link. And when I looked there was no one there. But it shows me, and you know, it's hard to describe unless you're on Restream or can see how it works, that somebody was there. And for the past several shows, and the last 30 minutes of the show, for whatever reason, it stops the comments. And on my end, it goes, the system goes on and off. And I'm hearing that this is happening to a lot of people. It's not just me. So I think it's something tied in with social media platforms. I don't know if it's a person reporting the show, algorithms, the army of fact checkers that are censoring. I do not know. So I apologize for that. And I don't know what the solution is because everything on my end was exactly the same. I didn't touch anything, move anything, or anything else. So I apologize. I don't know why one video played and the other didn't, because on my end, I can hear the sound perfectly fine. So I apologize. Karen, you also have a good day. And I won't go back and play that video again, but basically it was Robert Kennedy talking about children and how children are so unhealthy, that we're 70th in the percentile for unhealthy children, and how he wants to create policy to protect children and to make children healthy again. And so that's something he was talking about. And I have one more video about Kennedy, and it's kind of funny because this is, I believe this is NBC again being completely shut down by the director of the CDC because they're trying to come after Kennedy. And it's kind of funny because we don't often see liberal media being shut down by a member of the CDC, right? Because usually they go hand in hand, but they're coming after all of these people, you know, for wanting to make us a better world. It's the craziest thing. Oh, you guys did hear the video, just not me. That is so strange. Well, I'm glad you at least heard the video, but people were saying no sound, no sound. So I stopped the video. Well, I'm going to play this video because I want you guys to hear this. and I will be quiet. So you won't be hearing any sound from me just because I'm not talking. But we're going to play this video here, and you can see them get shut down, which is pretty darn funny.
Do you think we should be worried at all, like if he gets confirmed, that he could sort of start a real no vaccine culture and put that into public policy?
No, Brian, I don't think that. I mean, I'm probably one of the biggest advocates for vaccine. You mentioned that when I was CDC director, I would say that I think vaccines are the greatest gift of science to modern medicine, and I still believe that. Kennedy's not anti-vaccine. What Kennedy is about is transparency about vaccines, honest discussion about vaccines, asking for the data to show that these vaccines are safe and they're efficacious. And the mere question of asking, what's the data for safety? Many of his detractors say, okay, well, you're anti-vax. No, just show me the safety data. Show me the efficacy data. I have high confidence that Kennedy is going to be a strong supporter of transparency on vaccines, and where the vaccine data shows that they're efficacious and the benefits to the American public, he will promote them. I think, Brian, we need transformational change. Right now, we've created, over the last 20, 30 years, we've developed a disease system. We need to make a health system. And when Kennedy says he wants to help make America healthy again, when I was CDC director, one of the challenges was we lost about 1.2 million people died of COVID. Other countries like Taiwan lost less than 10,000 people. Why did we lose so many people? We lost so many people because
our people aren't healthy.
We're a sick nation. And Kennedy, Kennedy is really committed to making us healthy again. And I do agree with you. We should all get behind him. Making a healthy America is not a partisan issue. We ought to get behind him and help him make us healthy again.
So for anyone who is listening and not watching, that's former CDC director, Dr. Robert Redfield. And back when I was on the war on COVID, we talked about this guy a lot. And I think that that's an interesting concept. And it is News Nation, not NBC. Earlier, I did play an NBC clip. And News Nation, I had high hopes for them when they first started. I really did. And then they hired Cuomo, and I'm like, oh, forget it. Another masquerade of a news media company trying to pretend like they're unbiased, but they're very liberal, actually. I do not like News Nation at all. And this was just another example. Now, me personally, I am not anti-vax. I know a lot of you are. I am not anti-vax. I am anti-force you to take a vaccination. I am anti-unhealthy vaccination. I agree with what Dr. Redfield here is stating, is that I do think Kennedy is going to go and he's going to get the data and he's going to share and he's going to be very transparent about what exactly is in these vaccines, what is in these medications, what is in our food. You know, he's been talking about Fruit Loops of all things and the dye that is in Fruit Loops and how incredibly unhealthy it is for especially children, because a lot of this is about the children and the foods that they eat. A lot of the foods children eat are heavily pigmented with all of these dyes to make them look pretty and colorful and more appetizing to children. But in the meantime, we're poisoning children. And the same is happening with vaccines. Some vaccines I think are perfectly fine and safe. I really do. And others, not so much. I know I don't want to be a guinea pig for the world, that's for sure. And I'm not even going to get into the COVID vaccine because they'll take me down so fast. We'll wait till after Trump is elected, or not elected, until he's confirmed and he has inaugurated before we get too far into all of that. But I'm not anti-vax. I don't want an administration that's anti-vaccine. I want to know the truth about vaccines. And then I want to be able to make my own decision on whether or not a certain vaccine is good for me and or my children if I had young children. It's transparency and truth that we want. I'm so tired of hearing that, oh, X number of doctors said it's perfectly safe. X number of scientists said it's perfectly safe. Why? Because they were paid to say it's safe. You know, they received their government funding. They have to say it's safe, whether they think so or not. Sorry about that. I'm having all kinds of problems today, but I will get through it. And so anyway, I wanted to talk about that because I want to make sure people see they're going to come after these nominations, these appointees, with everything they have. But just remember, these people are put into the right place for the right reason. And then we had Congressman Sean Duffy, also former Congressman Sean Duffy, put in as he is going to be the Secretary of Transportation. Another good choice. I love his wife Rachel for one. If you know who Sean Duffy is, he's on Fox Business. His wife Rachel, she often is on Fox National. As much as I don't like Fox, I have always liked Rachel. I have always liked her husband Sean. They have 9 children, by the way. And I think they are a fantastic example for all Americans. And he has already said, Sean Duffy has already said, that he is going to immediately remove all DEI policies for pilots and air traffic controllers, which only makes safe. Sorry, I was reading part of the comment of Jay. It makes sense because guess what? If there's anywhere you don't want DEI, it is when it comes to your airlines, right? The last thing I want is a pilot who's not qualified and that person is able to pilot my plane because of DEI regulations, or an air traffic controller controlling where my plane lands or takes off, who's only in that position over these DEI legislature. It's wrong. People need to be hired for most jobs, if not all, based on qualifications. That's it, just based on qualifications. Who is the best person for a job? That's the person who should get the job. You know, we already have plenty of rules in place to make sure that discrimination doesn't occur. But sometimes we just have to hire the person that is best for the job. And sometimes, guess what? That's a white man. Sometimes it's a white man that's best for the job. I know white men are at the bottom of the totem pole. You guys are at the bottom of the barrel, aren't you? You get the worst of everything and absolutely no help from anywhere. But you know what? Sometimes the white man is actually the best person at the job. There's plenty of people out there that are minorities that are good at all jobs, as well as women, of course. But sometimes I know people lose their minds about white men being hired for these different positions. And that's why they came up with these DEI rules and legislation. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Whoever is best for the job, regardless of their religion, their sex, the color of their skin, those are the people that need to do the job. I could get angry and go on about that all day. And Robert, experimental. As far as vaccines, some of them absolutely are experimental. And we should know, that the most important part to me about moving forward into a Trump presidency is true transparency. Democrats always want to say that they're transparent, but they're anything but transparent. And we just learned that, of course, through this entire Senate Majority Leader vote, which was a private vote in secret. And I hope people have held Josh Hawley to the fire over that, because obviously he voted for Cronin, which Cronin didn't win. Thune did, Thune being the worst choice out of any of them. And they did it in secret. They don't want us to know who they're voting for. All of those folks who decided in Congress that they would have the secret vote, they all need to be called out. Every last one of them. There's no transparency at all under the Biden administration or any Democrat regime before him. Trump administration, on the other hand, I think they're going to be highly transparent. And that's what we want, isn't it? We just want to know. I know, we all have our issues that we're more concerned about than others. For me, I have said for many years, transparency on what we pay taxes for. If 75 cents of every dollar of mine that I earn goes back into paying taxes, I want to know what those taxes pay. And they are already starting to release some of the ridiculous data that of some of the things our taxpayer money is going into pay. And it's exactly what drives me absolutely batty. And I was going to talk about that today, but then this morning I had so many other things to talk about. I'm going to bring that in tomorrow. I do have some other taxpayer funded ridiculousness to talk about tomorrow. Some examples of how your tax money has been wasted. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. I only have a few more minutes. I started late, so I have a couple of extra minutes. Otherwise, I get cut off at 2 hours. So when I start reaching that 2 hour mark, if you see me start to panic, that is why, because I'm cut off at 2 hours. And so something else I wanted to talk about today is, speaking of money, the Pentagon, for the 7th time in a row, they've failed their audit. They have an $824 billion budget, and they can't account for it. They cannot account where that money has gone. Where did $824 billion go? Now, of course, of course, they know where the majority of it has gone, but there's a very good portion that they cannot account for. Where is the money? Where did it go? Who has it? You don't just lose billions of dollars. It's something to keep also to keep our eyes on. A lot of this I've already talked about. Harris, something else that came out in the news last night. We've already known how much money Harris spent in her campaign on public figures, giving money. It was like 2.5 million, I think we said yesterday, to Oprah's Harpo Studios. Well, now all of a sudden we have this revelation after all of that her campaign actually sent large sums of money to different organizations that newscasters supported before she did an interview on these different stations. The more we find out, and going back to transparency, we're going to find out where all of her money went from her campaign. We're going to find out who was paid. And the Trump administration going forward, if there's anything that you have been concerned with, I can guarantee you they're going to answer all those questions. We're going to find out everything. And I personally, I want to know where the money, the $824 billion for the Pentagon, for their budget went. And why is it that they've gone 7 years and have not been able to pass an audit? Where is the money going? And lastly, before I go, something I wanted to talk about, just because it's an ongoing situation, and that is the situation with P. Diddy. I know a lot of you don't care. It's okay if you don't want to stick around to hear about it, but I do think it's important. I was reading some comments. You know who Suge Knight is, of course. He's in prison. And some of the things that, when he was in prison, some of the things he's talked about was P. Diddy and some of the things that P. Diddy has done. And I'm not going to get into the victims. I'm sure you guys can all guess who these victims might be. But they talked about him basically more or less setting up these young men for these intimate trips with grown adult men going overseas, going to different countries. And he lined it all out very clearly. I watched the video. I heard his words talking about the things that P. Diddy did to these young boys, 12, 13, 14 years old, left into his care. And him sending these kids off with grown men. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous to think that this has been happening in our country. And of course, they want to say it's not true, but things are absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy. And now we're hearing that the feds raided P. Diddy's jail cell, and they took the notes that he had written that he was going to give to his attorneys. Now, typically, I don't know how that's all going to play out in the end, because you should have some attorney, client privilege with your attorneys. You should be able to pass along private information to your attorneys, but his attorneys didn't even know this raid was going to happen. Allegedly, they came in, they took the notes out of his cell. We don't know, of course, what the note said, but why I'm bringing this up is because I have seen so many videos. I don't have time to play them today. I probably will never play them. You can go out and look them up for yourself, but they are having investigators come to their homes or their places of business, and they're investigating who gave them information. And they're investigating whether or not these influencers and podcasters have been paid money to carry a certain narrative. And it's very hard to tell. I believe these are private investigators. I do not think they are feds. I don't think they're police officers. I don't think it's like an official thing. But who is paying these people to come out and talk to all these podcasters and all these influencers? Is it P. Diddy's attorneys? Is it a government source? Is it a victim? Who is doing this? And I really do think this situation is going to blow up. And I think it's going to be bigger than Epstein. I really do. I think it's going to be far bigger than Epstein, because we've all heard the stories about the baby oil. And then we heard, well, it's not really baby oil. It's actually GHB. And so what they're doing is they're using this baby oil and rubbing it all over each other. And in doing so, it makes them unconscious. It makes them not remember what happened, what they saw, what they did. It's so crazy. It almost sounds like it can't even be real, yet it allegedly is real. And we think what happened with Epstein is bad. What happened in this situation with P. Diddy, it is just going to blow the lid off of everything. And so many of these people that have been associated with P. Diddy, so many of these names we know, so many we don't know. Full transparency, that's what we're going to have. And not only are we going to know the Epstein client list, we're going to know all about P. Diddy, all of these videos that he's made, who was in these videos. It is all going to come to light. And I really do think it is going to change everything. Everything. When we find out who Epstein's client list, who the names are on that list, we all have a good idea. We probably don't know all of them. I know one of them is not Donald Trump, by the way. And when we find out, man, it is going to blow this country apart. It really is. And the P. Diddy situation, the more I hear it, I was in Georgia when all of the information about P. Diddy, was coming out, which is why I'm kind of late to the show with a lot of talking about a lot of this stuff, because when I was there, obviously I was so busy canvassing and, working on, getting out the vote for Donald Trump that I couldn't really hold that many podcasts when I was there. It was very difficult to do when you're moving hotels and locations every day and having to get up and get going so early in the morning and then working a little bit late into the evening. But I paid attention. I've watched it all. I've saved a lot. And I really do think it is absolutely going to change everything. There are so many people implicated in this P. Diddy situation. The Epstein list, that's going to take out a lot of people from the government. A lot of people, some people from the entertainment industry, but mostly the government. And then the P. Diddy stuff is going to really heavily influence what happens with the entertainment industry, anywhere from actors to musicians to producers to writers. It's going to just blow our country apart. I don't know what's going to happen from there. Are we ever going to look at any of these industries in the same way? And who's going to survive the fallout? Obviously there's a lot of really good people in Hollywood, a lot of good people in the music scene who've never been to a P. Diddy party, who have never taken part in any of this situation. But what about the people who have? What's going to happen to these people? It'll be very interesting to see it all play out. And Shelley says, one influencer that I listened to stated that she was offered money to oppose the narrative. Exactly. There's been a lot of money offered. And I think that's what these investigators are trying to get to the bottom of. Who is offering the money? And when they offer the money, is it to say that P. Diddy has more victims than we know? Or is it to say the opposite, that nothing ever happened and it's all just a bunch of fabricated, silliness? But after learning that Pizzagate was real, my mind is completely open to so many different things because, I consider myself a conspiracy person for sure. But sometimes things go a little too far for me. And I think, oh, that can't be true. It's too crazy for that to be true. And that was the case with the Pizzagate situation, that it was just too crazy to be true. And then recently, of course, they made that arrest. But John Podesta's alleged best friend, who is the person who also stated that Pizzagate wasn't true, wrote a bunch of articles that it wasn't true, finds out it absolutely is true. The guy's in prison right now for having some very heinous crimes against children. It was true. And this situation with P. Diddy, I think, is going to be true also. And it's going to be absolutely mind-blowing to us all. And I work in the entertainment industry. I don't think it's going to affect, movies being made or music being made, but I think there's going to be so many people involved that it's just going to twist and turn everything around. And I don't know where we're going to go from there. But I hope if it is true, and if P. Diddy really did control some of these young men and young women, and if he truly did, basically, let's just say it, pimp them out to adults in exchange for fame and fortune, I hope he never sees the light of day. I cannot wait to see all of this play out. I feel so bad for the victims. It is not their fault. But I would really like to see some parents prosecuted. The parents who allowed their children to live at P. Diddy's home and to be taken under his wing in exchange for fame and fortune, these parents need to be held accountable. I'm not hearing anything about the parents. The parents need to be held accountable. Is it really worth it? I mean, your kids end up being victimized, and they have beautiful cars and a beautiful home, but they're so messed up in life, they end up either unaliving themselves or strung out on drugs or God knows what else. And we see it happen. We see the dominoes falling. So I wanted to throw that in there because when I read these statements by Suge Knight, I was absolutely floored. And this man knows what happened. He knows. All of the people know. That's what we have to remember. All of these people know. They all know what happened. All of them. And how are we going to feel about that? How are we going to hold them accountable for knowing that there are victims, child victims. What adults do, I don't care. If you're an adult and you want to go have a party with a GHB, mixed with baby oil and do whatever it is you're going to do, I really could care less what you do as an adult. But when you bring children into the mix, it changes everything. And we have such a movement going forward to protect the children. All of this is going to be out in the open. Just wait and see. And it's going to be pretty interesting and explosive when we find out what the real truth is. And I think that's going to come a lot sooner than we all expect as well. So we're going to hang in and wait for that. So tomorrow, got a lot going on tomorrow. I will have a show every day this week that I'm aware of, unless I end up getting called into work and I can't make it. But we do have a lot to talk about coming forward. Every day we're going to be paying attention a little bit to what's going on between Russia and Ukraine. We're going to see all these stories unfold. We're going to see how it goes with these nominations. Trump has absolutely sworn these people will be appointed. They will be in these roles. And he's going to pull out every legislation he can that is constitutionally legal for him allow these people to be appointed. And it will happen. And the thing we got to keep an eye on is Harris. What's going to happen with Kamala Harris? Is Biden going to make her a Supreme Court justice? He certainly has the ability to. Is he going to step down and allow Kamala Harris to step up so she can have her reign as the only, or I should say the first, Black female president? A lot's going to unfold in the coming days and weeks. So that's it for today. I really appreciate everyone's support. Thank you for joining me and for hanging in there through all of the craziness with my sound and other technical issues. I will tell you, it's a lot to produce and host my own show. It is a lot. And getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning is really hard. So like I said, I may end up going, I've been contemplating back and forth between starting at 7 a.m., which I prefer, and 8 a.m., because I'm pretty much late every day trying to get everything loaded, the video clips, getting all my notes written out and everything else. And I don't know why I do. I don't even hardly ever look at my notes, but it's still important part of the process. But anyway, again, thank you all so much. And Lane joining us late to the show. Let's see here. What are you saying, Lane? Are the Black operators going to escalate the war in eastern Ukraine, or 2 Bigfoot sightings around Potosi? I heard about those Bigfoot sightings. And you, surname, not sure who you are, but I'm glad to have you here at 8 a.m. I think 8 a.m. is probably going to be the winning time, because it's just too hard to get started at 7 a.m. because you can't write down your notes the night before the show. Otherwise, I'm just going to be repeating everything everybody else says. I do not write down any notes or do anything about the show until I wake up at 4 a.m., 3:30 a.m., 4 a.m., because I want to make sure I have the latest information for you all. But again, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. I will stop droning on and on. I am Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap, and I will look forward to